Raucous crowds for Jeremy Corbyn in Scotland tonight, and from his Labour leadership rivals, dire warnings that the party could split or fall apart. Liz Kendall urged supporters to vote for anyone but Corbyn, while Andy Burnham and Yvette Cooper said the left-wingers' policies lacked credibility. It may all be academic. The latest poll analysis puts Jeremy Corbyn on 57%, a landslide victory on first preferences alone. We'll be talking to Liz Kendall and Jeremy Corbyn in a moment. He's at a rally right now in Glasgow. First, Fasma Manji reports.
The Corbyn craze hit Edinburgh today. The man himself looking rather unfazed by the awaiting crowd and press scrum. He refused to engage in counterfire after a fresh wave of attacks from his rivals for the leadership.
Do you care when your opponents say you've got no credibility?
I don't reply to personal abuse, to personal attacks, to personal criticism, because the policies are more important, the issues are more important, and we don't need to reduce our politics to a puerile level.
His supporters now feel so buoyant, they imagine Mr Corbyn at number 10 itself.
The next Prime Minister. The MP for Islington North, Jeremy Corbyn.
At the general election, Labour was practically wiped out in Scotland. And yet today, some voters felt a party with Mr Corbyn at the helm would bring them back.
Did you vote Labour at the last election?
No, I voted SNP at the last election because I didn't feel that people here were represented by the Labour Party in England. I don't think that Blair and any of the other candidates represent what's actually going on.
But Jeremy Corbyn could?
Yes, absolutely.
He's the only real Labour candidate in this election.
What do you mean by real Labour candidate?
Well, I mean by that somebody who stands for the values of Labour, the cause of Labour and the Labour movement, which is peace and not being dragged into foreign wars.
I voted for SNP. I voted Labour.
And if Jeremy Corbyn were leader, would that change your mind?
I would turn to Labour because he stands up for what I believe in, as opposed to former Labour candidates who are all for business and their Blairites at heart. So,
you know what I'm sick of? I'm sick of this Oxbridge gang, like Andy Burnham, like Yvette Cooper, like Liz Kendall, who have never worked a day in their life, who are never going to work a day in their life, trying to tell me what I should do.
Despite the fact only yesterday Andy Burnham refused to engage in negative campaigning, today he appeared to suggest Jeremy Corbyn lacks economic credibility. But he says he understands members may be feeling disillusioned.
Well, I understand the mood of the party is for change. You know, they don't want to see politics just carrying on as normal, business as usual. They're sick of politics based on sound bites and spin and the sense that politicians don't actually believe what they're saying.
Oh my gosh. Back in Edinburgh, across town from the Corbyn rally, Liz Kendall was holding an event of her own, albeit much smaller scale.
You've told your supporters to put Burnham and Cooper as second preferences, kind of part of this anyone but Corbyn coalition. So what's the point in you running?
Listen, I will never stop fighting for what I believe in. I cannot pretend to be agnostic about Jeremy Corbyn leading the Labour Party. I think it would be wrong. I think his policies are not new. They're the policies and the politics of the 1980s.
But there are those who are finding new energy in Corbyn's policies, including some who voted yes in the referendum. Miriam Brett will be at the rally in Glasgow tonight.
I think he represents a very different type of politics that we've seen from Labour for so long. So many people have been utterly heartbroken with Labour's continued shift to the right and pandering, I think, to a tiny minority of Tory votes.
And so while senior Labour figures continue to warn of the apocalypse that follows if Mr Corbyn is elected, he is resonating with some Scottish voters who have long felt betrayed by Labour itself.
Well, we were due to speak to Jeremy Corbyn about 20 minutes ago, and our camera is still waiting outside the building where he is, although we are currently being told he may now not come out. Needless to say, the camera will stay there waiting throughout the programme for him to come and talk to us. But Liz Kendall, who is currently trailing in the leadership polls, joins us now from a campaign event in Newton Aycliffe in County Durham. Liz Kendall, I mean, you are trailing very, very low in the latest poll analysis, 7%. Even your supporters say they don't think you can win. Isn't the responsible thing to do if you want anyone but Corbyn to back out now and say support Yvette Cooper or Andy Burnham?
No, I'm going to be fighting for what I believe in till the very end. Look, you know, people here in Newton Aycliffe and across the northeast need a Labour government so that, you know, that they've got hope that they can get jobs for the future, that we can invest in our public services and tackle inequality. And they need a leader of the Labour Party who can win not just here but in the south, in places like Watford, where I grew up, or Bedford, where I'm going to visit tomorrow. I want to see a Labour government because we are the greatest champion of equality and opportunity this country has ever seen. And we've done things like created the NHS, Sure Start, the minimum wage, the Equal Pay Act, the Open University, when we are in government. And I want to see a Labour government, and I'm asking people to vote for me as the best leaders to win in 2020.
But your campaign has clearly failed, hasn't it? I mean, you're not saying, are you, that Yvette Cooper or Andy Burnham are incapable of winning. You are saying Jeremy Corbyn is incapable of winning. So, I mean, you know, if your deep fear now is that Jeremy Corbyn is going to win and consign Labour over the cliff, as Tony Blair says, don't you need to do something selfless?
Look, we have an alternative voting system in this election, and I'm urging people to use their second and third preferences. But you know what? I know I'm doing.
They will be
I'm not doing well in the polls.
He's at 57%.
I know it is a long shot, and I know that Jeremy Corbyn is doing. But look, when you believe something, you don't give up fighting for it. Just because the times are tough, you don't stop. Actually, I think a real leader still carries on going and argues for the case that they believe in, even when times are hard, and that's what I'm going to do till the end. Because
can't you
people
continue?
Here in Newton Aycliffe, they need a Labour government. They need a Labour government. I will continue.
Yeah, but can't you continue to press your case without splitting the anyone but Corbyn votes? I mean, you know, your second and third preferences are irrelevant. He is way ahead. He's at 57%. At this rate, he's going to win on the first preference.
Look, as I said, I'm being really honest about it. Jeremy's doing very well. I'm in fourth place, but this is an alternative vote system, and I want to make the case for what I believe in. I don't want to see a centralised country. I want power down to our regions like the North East so that they can make the right decisions for people. I want to see an end to the inequalities that emerge before kids even start school. So I don't want to see an inheritance tax cut like the Tories want. I want to see that money going into the early years services. I have a strong and positive alternative that I'm putting forward against the Tories, but also that actually regains trust on the economy. You know, unless we as a party regain trust on the economy, unless we're seen as a party that wants to help the weak and the vulnerable, but also the people that want to get on, we will never be in government.
I mean, you
and
say
that
positive.
is why I put myself forward for this leadership election.
You say positive, but this is now going negative, isn't it? Because it's going into an anyone but Corbyn phase for you. That's the phrase, you know, that you've been and your supporters have been using, and it's very difficult to win on a negative campaign.
I've actually never used that, Christian. I've actually never used that phrase, and I wouldn't. But I can't, as I said earlier, pretend that I'm agnostic about Jeremy Corbyn winning the Labour leadership. You know, I don't want to see us, submit a resignation to the British people as a serious party that wants to get back into government. And actually, I've always focused on the policies. You know, what do people here in the North East need? They need the jobs of the future, not billions of pounds spent on reopening coal mines. They need a leader that is going to be strong in saying we must remain part of Europe.
So why have you failed to sign up new members?
Damage it would do to jobs and growth here.
Why have you failed to sign up new members the way? Well,
possibly not as many as
exactly.
Possibly not as many as Jeremy. I'll admit that.
But why is that though? You know, that's a movement, isn't it, on the left? That's a genuine, enthusiastic political movement,
doubt,
and you haven't been able to match it at all.
Look, without doubt, people want to see an alternative. You know, they want to have something different from where we've been over the past 5 years. And they're angry with politics and politicians. They want to change. They don't want more of the same. They don't want, politicians who talk the language that people don't normally talk. They want them to focus on the issues that they care about. I just have a different alternative. I admit, Christian, it's tough going, but you never stop fighting for I'm fighting for the future of our party, the party that I love, the party that has made great achievements in the past. And I'm saying to people, vote for me as the person best placed to win in 2020, to regain people's trust on the economy in constituencies in the South, which we really need to do if we're going to get back into government.
Okay.
I'm the best person to win in 2020, and I will continue to make that case.
Let me just ask you about one other thing. I mean, you've been quoted in the media today, raising concern for the Northern Ireland peace process if Jeremy Corbyn wins the Labour leadership. I also want to ask you about what Ivan Lewis, your colleague in the shadow cabinet, has been saying. He's a supporter of yours, of course, criticising Mr Corbyn's judgment for expressing support for people who have engaged in anti-Semitic rhetoric. He's talking about Paul Eisen, the man behind a campaign group in Mr Corbyn's constituency. I just wondered, do you have any concerns about Jeremy Corbyn's views on the Middle East?
Listen, I think the Labour Party needs a leader that will have a credible foreign policy, that actually understands the very difficult challenges we face in the Middle East in particular, and has an even-handed approach. And what I said in relation to Northern Ireland is, that there is still a very fragile situation there, and Labour does need a leader who's credible on foreign policy and the future. And just take one example here. Jeremy Corbyn wants us out of NATO. And said he thinks it's wrong that Poland joined NATO. And I don't believe that that's right. I believe we must play a strong role in the rest of the world, and Labour needs a leader that can gain trust of leaders across the world, and I believe I'm the best person to do that job.
Liz Kendall, thanks for joining us.